Okay, let's start the webinar. I want to welcome everyone to TechLaunch's BullPen number 19, looking forward to the presentations. It's beautiful out there right now. It's snowing in most cases. Right now, I'm looking out the window and I'm in Kinnelon, New Jersey, and it is not snowing, but it will soon. What I'd like to do is introduce myself, Mario Casabona. I'm the founder and managing director of TechLaunch. My co-host is Robin Baer, and she's a strategic advisor for startups and middle market companies, and also an advisor and a senior mentor at TechLaunch. And I will be turning it over to her after I do some introductions. The other individual that I'd like to introduce at this point is Eric Korb, that I think that without him, I'm not sure we would be live right now, but he's the webinar producer. He's also an advisor and a senior mentor at TechLaunch. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, what's TechLaunch's mission? Our overall mission is to commercialize emerging technology by finding and nurturing early stage tech ventures to accelerate growth via mentoring, coaching, network, and access to resources and capital. And the next slide, you'll see the three programs that we're active or executing on our mission. The first one is the Business Accelerator, which really is, which happens before this bullpen. We actually do some mentoring, coaching to a few of the companies, and we do screening. We get it down to about 5 companies, and of the 5, we select 3 that will continue mentoring and will present at bullpen. The other program we have is Startup Bootcamp Weekend, which sort of, well, we've suspended it because of the coronavirus, and hopefully next year, soon, probably middle of next year, we'll start it up again. The other program we initiated primarily because of the COVID virus is our office hours program, where on a weekly basis, I send out an email blast featuring 5 to 6 mentors that are available for office hours. And so far, the Business Accelerator is going very well. Again, this is bullpen 19, office hours program, very active, and hopefully the Startup Bootcamp next year. Next slide, please. So I have the pleasure of briefly, and actually they'll do a self introduction to our 4 panelists. We're excited about having the 4, like we have all the other panelists in the past and the future. So Lorine, if you can start off doing a brief introduction, that would be great.
Hi everyone, Lorine Pendleton. I am a New Jersey resident. I grew up in northern New Jersey. I run a VC fund with Portfolio. It's called Rising America. It's a $10 million fund. We invest in early stage companies, series seed through series C. And we've already, we closed the fund about 2 months ago. We've already made 6 investments. And then I'm also the chair of Tiger 21, which is a network for ultra high net worth individuals. And I've been an investor, started as an angel investor. I've been investing for about nearly 8 years now.
Great. Thank you, Lorine, and welcome. Thank you for being on the panel. Steve?
Thanks, Mario. This is Steve Socolof. I am with Tech Council Ventures, which is a early stage venture fund. We're based here in New Jersey, and we have a geographic mandate that covers the Mid-Atlantic region. So New Jersey and New York, Pennsylvania, and kind of Connecticut down to DC. We're a generalist fund, so no strong sector focus, but we do been doing a lot in digital health and enterprise and in clean tech. We actually made a couple investments in chemistry deals. Pretty exciting. We've had a really active year. We've done probably a dozen investments in the last 18 months. So COVID and everything else that's been going on hasn't slowed us down much. In fact, we've found staying at home and being on Zoom all day long pretty productive. And work closely with Tech United and the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, and love the New Jersey ecosystem, and excited to see the pitches tonight.
Thank you, Steve. And KK?
Hi. After starting and running a company for 16 years and selling it, for the past 6 years, I've been spending time in making investments. In addition to that, I teach at Cornell Tech in New York.
KK, thank you. Eric? Not Eric, I'm sorry. I was going to say Joan?
Hi, so I'm Joan Zief. I'm an angel investor. I've been a member of Golden Seeds, one of the larger angel investing groups in the country, for about 12 years. The screening for Golden Seeds, as many of you know, is that we provide capital to startup companies that are significantly owned and run by women. We are just in our first year of our newest chapter, which is New Jersey. And so we've it's been a great experience. Prior to that, I was an equity analyst on Wall Street.
Very good, thank you. And again, thank you very much for being on the panel and taking the time to be here. Eric, next slide. And of course, what I'd like to do is briefly go through our event partners. Jumpstart New Jersey Angel Network is a premier angel group in the Mid-Atlantic region with over 30 to 35 members, and typically invest in the range of 100 to about $1 million, 100,000 to about $1 million. It's seed, early stage seed angel round. Tech Council Ventures 2, and Steve Socolof is here, who's the managing director, you heard. And they've got over $50 million under management. They invest in early stage technology companies in the Mid-Atlantic region. Casabona Ventures, I'm the managing director. We've got over 30 tech companies in the portfolio, and we invest at the angel round. Check sizes of about $25,000 to $100,000 with capital for the next round, dry powder, if you would. Focus is on med tech, digital health, materials, and more broadly, IoT. Gibbons Law is a nationally recognized leader in corporate law that regularly advises early stage businesses. They have over 200 attorneys. Gibbons is a leading law firm in the East Coast and ranked among the nation's top 200 by the American Lawyer. Witham Smith & Brown, an accounting firm, is the 26th largest accounting firm, tax and a consulting firm in the country, and has had a group focused on startups and emerging growth sector for over 20 years. Gerhardt Law is a full-service intellectual property law firm supportive of early stage ventures, and they specialize in patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Robin, who's going to manage the rest of the program. So Robin, can you please take it over? Eric, next slide.
Sure. Thank you, Mario. So welcome everyone to this special snowbound edition of Bullpen Pitch, number 19. So thank you everyone for being here today. Our format today is pretty similar to the way that we have been running things in person. Some slight differences for our virtual online format. Each company will have a 7-minute time slot to present their pitch, which will be followed by 7 minutes of Q&A from the audience. Audience members, as you're hearing the pitch, if you have questions that are coming up in the middle of it, that's fine. Put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you want to wait till the end to put your question in, that's fine too. What I'll do then during the Q&A portion, I'm sifting through those questions and picking out a few to lob to the founders and presenters. After the audience portion, we'll have 7 minutes of feedback from our investor panel, and we will cycle through each panelist one at a time. I think it's important to know what they're going to be looking at. Each panelist, each judge will be voting on the most fundable company. And by that, we're going to be looking at 5 main metrics. Team, in terms of, is this the team to execute on this vision and this idea, and what kinds of special qualities or special expertise and understanding have they demonstrated? The judges are also going to be looking at product in terms of any unique intellectual property or markers of a minimally viable product that have been demonstrated thus far. They're also going to be looking at market size and need and the potential for scalability of this idea. And they're also going to be looking at capital raise and use of funds, how much has been raised to date, what's the current ask, and how they plan to use those proceeds to hit certain milestones. And finally, they're going to be looking at overall presentation quality. And as Mario said, the winner gets the opportunity to pitch to the Jumpstart Angel Network, as well as Tech Council Ventures, and receives up to $15,000 worth of in-kind services. So with that, next slide, please. We are going to start with Arke Aeronautics. Arke is a mobile software platform that connects first responders to life-saving information so they know where to go and what to expect on scene before they arrive. Arke was mentored this round by Peter Kestenbaum and Ratan Agarwal, and is going to be presented by Brandon Graham, founder and CEO. Brandon?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Graham, CEO of Arke. And when you dial 911, our software platform connects first responders to life-saving information on their cell phones and tablets before they arrive on scene, so they know where to go and exactly what to expect when they get there. Next slide. First responders are real-life superheroes, but the tools they have to collect, consume, and share information are fundamentally broken. Our CTO, Sherman, who's on the call, lives this every day as an active firefighter and EMT, where all too often he's missing critical details about the burning home he's about to run into, or which side of the highway the car accident was really on. These situations happen every day, putting Sherman at risk and making it harder to get to you in time. Now, emergency first response is an underserved market ripe for innovation. Thousands of departments, millions of first responders, all facing very similar challenges. We raised a Series seed round last year to de-risk our technology, validate our concept and pricing, and commercialize our platform. And we offer a service subscription model with strong early traction in public safety and defense markets. More detail on all of this later, just an overview. Next slide. Even though our end user is the first responder, this problem affects everybody on this call. Every adult in the US is going to dial 911 at least once a year on average. And for every minute someone's in cardiac arrest, their chance of surviving decreases 10%. The average home today burns down in 3 to 4 minutes. 700,000 people dial 911 every day. That's 8 calls per second. And it takes an average of 9 minutes for help to arrive. 9 minutes. In this business, every second counts. In fact, the FCC found that reducing the national average response time by just 1 minute could save 10,000 lives every year in the US alone. Next slide. Where before first responders relied on communicating over radio and whiteboards, our software is using machine learning and artificial intelligence to combine 6 information streams and 30 data types into a real-time mobile dashboard customized to the first responders' needs. And we call this process data fusion. It's really, really hard to do, but not only from a technical perspective, from a workflow perspective. So first responders are literally rushing to the scene. They're wearing gloves. People could be bleeding out. It's not just about the features, it's about making information easily consumable at a glance. And if you want to think about Arke's secret sauce or our innovation, it's right here. Collecting, consuming, and sharing real-time information with mobile teams. We're in the process of filing our intellectual property, and we have a number of proprietary algorithms also protected under trade secret as well. Got to move on for time, but happy to go into detail later. This is a huge market, and our customers are well-defined, visible, and approachable. Going from the bottom up on this slide, our first targets are going to be the 4,500 small to medium-sized volunteer fire departments in a 5-hour drive from our New Jersey-based headquarters. They're usually understaffed and have high turnover, which means they would benefit from tools like Arke the most. Our pricing model has been validated by multiple local public safety departments and costs the average size department $4,000 to $5,000 annually. And this is not our pricing model, but just as context, over the course of a year, that works out to about $2 per response. In phase 2 of our go-to-market strategy, we'll expand our focus to target EMS and law enforcement by leveraging already existing distribution networks and channel partners like AT&T's FirstNet, the nation's dedicated LTE network for first responders, building up to $150 million revenue opportunity for Arke. And I'm happy to share diligence materials on this and discuss after the presentation. Where are we today and where are we going? We're capitalized. We've de-risked and demonstrated our technology to potential customers and strategics. We've been through 4 due diligence processes with professional angel investors, funds, and strategics. Happy to introduce you to those. And we're also launching our beta with 3 of our local public safety partners that have been working with us since 2018. And we're also about a month away. If we could go to the early revenue slide, please. And we're about a month away from closing a $50,000 contract with the fire department at Joint Air Force Base McGuire Fort Dix in South Jersey. This is just a 3-month feasibility study. One more slide, please. We've already begun preparing a $750,000 phase 2 proposal to actually implement our technology on base. And this could create a multi-million-dollar opportunity as a sole source contractor for 400 domestic US military bases across the country, each with multiple EMS, fire, and police departments on base. Next slide. So we've got the right team in place with the right skill sets needed to execute. Over the past 5 years, I've founded and scaled early stage technology companies, led award-winning engineering teams, and hold an MBA from Rowan University. I mentioned we've got first responders on both our leadership team and advisory board with strong relationships to key stakeholders in state and local government. And finally, our software platform has been developed by our award-winning US-based team of full stack software engineers, which was actually just recognized by the US Navy. Next slide. Our advisory board and previous investors are hands-on and have decades of combined experience in scaling businesses, government contracting, and emergency first response. Happy to make intros here as well. Next slide. We're raising $1.5 million to go to market, grow our sales pipeline, and get to cash flow break even with 120 paying customers. Plenty more details in diligence. Next slide. We have detailed financial projections that I'm happy to share, but what we're essentially offering is a ground floor opportunity. A software as a service play with a clear path to a multi-million-dollar recurring revenue opportunity and multiple exit opportunities as well, which I'll touch on briefly. To talk to the competition, the 6 companies on the right offer closed software systems or pure hardware solutions. If technology is going to disrupt this industry, it's going to have to happen on the terms of first responders. Most of them can't afford million-dollar solutions right now. And by integrating the existing technology infrastructure that our customers already have invested in, we can significantly lower our barrier to entry for that initial sale. And by creating an open platform, we actually turn a lot of those competitors up there into partners. Next slide. The timing is right for this opportunity. Really, any one of our channel partners could pick us up. Happy to talk in more detail about this, but in the essence of time, let's go to the last slide. Just to recap, Arke's mission is to help first responders make informed decisions, arrive faster, and save lives. This is a de-risk technology with a clear market need and an opportunity for positive social impact. Thanks.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, great. Now we are going to go to audience questions. So audience members, please put your questions in the Q&A forum, not in the chat. Q&A is all the way on the right at the bottom of your screen. That's where I'm going to be looking to take your questions. So please put them there so that I can see them. Brandon, let's go back to a couple of things that you were talking about. You were talking about an open platform as one of the hallmarks of this company. Can you maybe go through that a little bit more? What was your decision process, and why do you think that's the key to your success?
Yeah, well, because this is a massive problem and it's really difficult to solve. And one company can't be good at everything. So what we offer first responders is a way to integrate all of the solutions that work the best for them in a single mobile platform by connecting all of those data points. And then what we essentially do is provide them to the mobile first responder and give them at a glance everything that they need to go and do their job, and then put the phone down or put the tablet down. So we essentially enable them to use the infrastructure that they've already invested in, as opposed to in order to make that sale, you have to basically get all new stuff. That wouldn't be an easy sell.
Okay, great, thank you. So we've got some questions. What are the data sources? You talked about integrating multiple data sources. I believe you said there were 6 that you're working with right now. So what are those data sources that you use, and how easy would it be to eventually expand that in the future?
Yeah, I know there might have been an issue with advancing the slides. I was muscle memory clicking forward, forgot to say to advance the slide, but if we could go back to the product slide, just for people to take that in if possible. If not, there's 6 information streams and 30 data types that we're planning on integrating today, and then more in the future. Just to give you a flavor of those. So the 911 dispatch details for the call, where responders are en route to the scene of the emergency. And then utility tools. So what happens when you're responding to a medical emergency and the person doesn't speak English? Weather, hazardous materials, fire hydrant locations. All of this gets boiled down into a single dashboard or a map that first responders can use, much like you would use Google Maps to find the nearest gas station. First responders can use it the same way.
Okay, great. What is the cost to onboard a typical customer?
Yeah, so the cost to us is relatively low. We actually have developed the platform much like, I'm not saying that we're going to be the next Facebook. I'm just saying it much like Facebook works, where you actually input your personal attributes to the platform, and the department can onboard their own data. They can also pay us to onboard their data for them, which would be an additional fee. So really, we don't see much expense except for any marketing and sales conversations, that time. But a very minimal amount, less than $1,000.
Okay, great. And can you share some feedback from your beta customers? Things, maybe some comments that they have shared with you so far.
Yeah, so this is not currently live in beta. We're going to beta. So that's going to happen in Q1 of next year. But like I mentioned, we've been working with 3 primary partners that have been helping us co-develop this platform for the past 2 years. And their main feedback is, don't give me another app to use and learn, right? So we've made our platform very simple. There's usually only 3 or 4 buttons that you can tap on the screen, information on the screen, and we don't ask them to maintain 6 or 7 different apps. It's just one interface that they can use, and it's been very simple. So we've got a lot of good feedback around how we've been able to structure that in our solution.
Okay, so that's great, because that actually ties into another question that we had, which was
Sure.
How much training is required for use, which I think you've kind of answered.
Yeah, if you can use a smartphone, you can use our app. We designed it to be used by a 5-year-old because the finger dexterity of a first responder with gloves on is significantly decreased. And they're going to be running around, right? So this has to be very easy to use. And that's, whenever we implement a feature, that's the first thing that we think about is, will they have the ability to actually use this on the go?
Okay, great. We have a question about your projections for customer acquisition.
Sure.
So did you have a ramp up period? How many do you anticipate on onboarding or acquiring in the first year? And what makes you think that you are, what's going to be your success, your reason for success in being able to acquire those customers? Yeah,
so there is a ramp up in our 4-year projection that we share, and I can forward all of this to anybody that's interested. In our 4-year projection, we target hitting 2,100 departments after 4 years after raising this round. But in year one, we're pretty conservative, just 18 departments. And really what we're focused on there is to make sure that the technology works, make sure that our customers love the technology and use it every day, and then kind of pour as much fuel on the fire as we can and go to market. And in order to ramp up and get that scaling factor, this is going to be a really sticky sell. And the reason is because when one department starts using it, 30% of your responses are going to be what's called mutual aid, where they work together. So one department's going to have it and the next department's going to say, wow, that's a great tool. I wish we had that. Talk to their chief. And in that way, there's going to be a network effect that's going to allow us to sell this really without selling it. Leveraging channel partners into that is going to be a future way to really pour more fuel on the fire as well.
Okay, great. So you're looking at some viral effects of usage, starting at a reasonable number the first year and expanding on that as well. I'm looking for these other questions. Let's see. Are there any liability concerns if your system makes a mistake?
I mean, we have professional lawyers looking at terms of service and privacy policy and all of that. There is a moral responsibility, right? Like, this platform is going to be helping people save people's lives, so we take that very seriously. But at the end of the day, there's no legal liability that we're not prepared to handle. And our technology is very robust. We will not put out a feature that's not ready for those reasons. And our customers understand that, and they appreciate it.
Okay. We have a question about, does this require a cell signal to work? And I know that you mentioned the AT&T FirstNet network. So yeah, perhaps you could talk a little bit about the technology that you're laying this on top of.
Yeah, so you need an internet connection to transmit information and receive information. And that internet connection can live on any mobile band that's being used. So for example, military doesn't use, your typical commercial LTE, right? They have their own secure band. But as long as you have an internet connection, you can take and transmit information. Now, our app also has that database, stored locally, so you can still access the information if you lose a connection. That's, a common, issue or challenge that any company is going to deal with. And it's just one of those things that we're going to have to work through and make sure that we are prepared for.
Okay, great. And that is the end of our audience Q&A. So thank you, audience, for contributing such great questions.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
So it's always a little bit of a trick to try to field everyone. If I did not get to your question, I apologize. Usually the founders are very open to answering those questions directly, so feel free to reach out to each founder if they did not get a chance to address your question specifically. We are going to go now to the panel and cycle through our panelists' questions. Panelists, if you could focus on 1 or 2 key questions, you each have roughly 1.5 to 2 minutes, and we've got to move quickly through that. So first up is Lauren, if you've got questions for Brandon with Arke.
Oh,
Lauren?
no audio.
Lauren, can you hear us?
Sorry, hi, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So I'm just curious about the sales cycle. I know you have a contract with McGuire Air Force Base, but what do you think is going to be your typical sales cycle? You're selling into the government, which typically is a long sales cycle, and then also kind of budgetary constraints with, selling into the government and their budgetary constraints. So just curious about, what do you think is going to be your typical sales cycle?
Yeah, typical sales cycle is probably going to end up somewhere around 6 to 9 months. Obviously, we're going to, work as best as we can to decrease that, to shorten that sales cycle as much as possible. What I will say, as we gain more traction and more customers start working with us, there will be additional methods of, contracting, let's say at the county level, where the county has standard operating procedures. And if we become a authorized, service provider, all of those departments. For example, in Gloucester County, there's 75 police, EMS, and fire departments. If we get in with one at the county level, we could work with all of them, within the same structure for that. Now, on the military side, this is why we're so focused on that SBIR contract, which is not a done deal yet, but we have every reason to believe that we're going to get that. The $50,000 phase one study, feasibility study. If we go through that program, there's an opportunity to become a sole source contractor for 400 U.S. military bases domestically. And that would be, would be a $10 million plus contract right there in perpetuity.
Brandon, thank you. I want to move on, make sure all the
Sure.
judges get to ask their questions. So Steve, you have questions for Brandon.
Yes, my first question is, why is it called Arke Aeronautics?
So Arke,
I kept waiting for you to say something about aerial surveillance or something.
yeah, so one of the data types, if we were to go back to that slide, is actually taking drone footage in. So not enough time to go in a 7-minute pitch, but any first responder is going to be interested in using drones in the future. There's already thousands of them out there, thousands of departments using them. So we can actually take aerial footage, which includes thermal imaging cameras, which are extremely helpful when fighting house fires or search and rescue. And we can actually pipe that video information onto the platform as well. So that's one of the 30 data types that we can fuse together into the dashboard.
I see. And then my second question is, given where you are in terms of your development and your pre-beta launch, you made the comment that your technology is robust. So I'm just curious how you know that.
Yeah, so we've been developing the back-end systems that actually take all of the data in, organize it, and then get it ready to shoot out to the mobile platform. And those systems are primarily where most of the work went into. We've been developing this platform for the past 1.5 years, and most of the work has gone into the logic, the brains of how do you do that. And so in terms of being able to handle that information coming in and going out, it is a robust system. Obviously, the mobile interface is important to the product because the customer has to interface with it. So that's the part that is being currently finalized and then being rolled out to the beta. But I'm happy to show a live demo of the mobile platform as it exists today, which has all the core functionality that we would need to launch the beta. It's just basically logistics, making sure everybody can download it and use it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Brandon, for that answer. KK, we're up to you for questions.
Hey, Brandon. So good presentation. Obviously, just a few comments. I think the challenge you have obviously is to take multiple sources of data and present it in a way that's easy to kind of consume in real time. And obviously, I'm sure you've given a bunch of thoughts to your user experience. I think the fact that you're going after the US bases probably is a good thing, because one of the things which I'm struggling with is as you think about the different types of areas you're going to, different types of towns, they have all kinds of restrictions. That kind of goes into a very heterogeneous environment, whereas the US bases more likely than not are likely to be very homogeneous. So my comment is kind of probably skew your resources away from regular townships and more towards the bases initially, while you figured out the rest. The thing when you get out of the US bases, you'll have to kind of think hard about the unit economics. Each township will probably have a different way of looking at their incidents. And yes, at the 50,000 foot level, your math obviously made sense, but when it comes down to each locality, they'll worry a lot about what it means to me and the economics for my department. So my advice to you would be to kind of focus, when you get down to that level, is to kind of think about exactly how many incidents happen. Like, for example, if I look at my township of Homedale, I don't think the fire truck even moves. So, I'm just talking about, so it depends, and it'll vary based on the locality. So your pricing model and such have to adjust to that.
Yeah, is this feedback or should I respond?
No, feel free to respond. Just
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure you got it. So I would say you're absolutely on the money. We're excited about working with the U.S. military because A, it validates our platform. And B, it's a free way to develop the platform because any developments there make the product in the commercial market that much better.
Yeah.
So that's the first side. The second side is when we talk to our customers, we don't put any guesswork, or our potential future customers, we don't put any guesswork into, is this going to make sense for them, right? So we come out of the gate and ask those questions about, okay, does this make sense in terms of data challenges, logistic challenges, and then cost challenges? So that's one of the great things of having a first responder, an active first responder on our leadership team, Sherman. He can actually speak their language, and I've picked up the isms that they use, their specific language, but he can actually translate that into, okay, how do we build a strategy that works for our business in those specific challenges?
Understood.
Great. KK, thanks so much for your comment and question. Last up, we have Joan, your question for Brandon.
I also have more of a feedback. I would just also say that I thought the presentation was clear and that you covered all the criteria.
Thank you.
However,
That makes me
yes,
so happy. Okay, so okay.
right. However, here comes the however. Just a few comments.
Sure.
I think it would have been very helpful to describe a real example. So, somebody goes to as you say, in the aftermarket, you sort of are alluding to it. Somebody goes to a fire, a drone. How do you get the drone there? I mean, do you have drones yourself or are you contracting with somebody to do it? Same thing about weather. I mean, if I need to know the weather or the traffic, are you contracting with a weather outlet? Are you contracting with Google, Maps? I mean, how does that, who are you getting that data from? The question came up, but it wasn't exactly clear how that's coming to you and why it's so inexpensive. The other thing I would say is if IP has value, I mean, if part of your value is the IP, if you think that, then I think that would be a little bit more, that would be an additional thing to highlight, that is one of the values of the thing. And then lastly, the only thing I would say about the military is I think the one other additional comment to be made is how you're getting into the military. It's not so, I mean, we've had a lot of companies who have wanted to sell to the military.
Well,
I think that's interesting to see your road into the military to make it a more reasonable expectation.
So
Brandon, you have 10 seconds to answer that.
I cold called them. One conversation turned into a potential contract. So due diligence. Let's keep the conversation going. But I appreciate all the feedback and gonna try to take it all into the pitch next time. Thank you.
Okay, Brandon, thank you so much. Panelists, thank you for your questions and feedback. At this point, panelists, take your time to fill out the scorecard for Arke Aeronautics. Eric, I think, can we go to the next slide? Great. So the TechLaunch organization really thrives on the basis of the volunteer work of our mentors. So these are just some of the folks who give of their time to help founders and help startup companies in the region be able to refine their ideas and work on specific tasks and issues. As Mario mentioned at the beginning, weekly during COVID, we've had office hours. So please check your email or check your LinkedIn posts for notifications about which mentors are holding office hours this week. And you can kind of try to pick one and bring your problems and kind of get some assistance with that. Okay, great. Then we are going to keep moving on. Next up, we have Neoneur. Neoneur is a breakthrough digital development biomarker for neonates, detecting complications in feeding and respiration, impacting care by detecting infection, growth, and developmental complications, enabling improved care, earlier discharged, and reduced readmissions. I've had the privilege of mentoring Neoneur, and it's being presented today by Caroline Hodemaker, CEO. Caroline?
Thanks so much. Robin, you've been very wonderful in helping and assisting. Thanks for the opportunity to present to TechLaunch today. As Robin said, I'm Caroline Hodemaker, CEO of Neoneur. Neoneur is a $1 billion medtech AI-driven opportunity to improve outcomes of at-risk newborn infants using a digital biomarker to track their clinical stability, capability, and neurological development with both clinical and economic benefits. Next slide, please. NICU care has improved remarkably in the last 2 decades, saving lives of many more at-risk infants, but not always with good outcomes. These populations are at the highest risk for developmental delays, and up to 50% have lifelong complications. They start their lives in the neonatal intensive care unit, most with either an NG tube or a feeding dysfunction. They're often kept in the hospital to monitor oral feeding challenges after other issues are managed. Next slide. The American Academy of Pediatrics focuses on 5 areas of assessments prior to discharge. Thermal regulation, cardiac function, and respiration all have tools, making them easy to assess. But neurological development and quantitation of safe oral feeding do not. Neoneur fills this gap. Next slide. Safe oral feeding is very different for infants than adults. They coordinate suck, swallow, and breathing continuously for minutes at a time. These patterns are driven by the brainstem and are aligned with infant-specific physiology and sensory capabilities. Safe oral feeding skills are developed late in gestation, so preterm infants, infants with delays, complications, or genetic syndromes may not possess these skills when born. The ability to coordinate suck, swallow, and breathing is highly important for growth and development, for preventing complications such as respiratory infections, and building skills used later for solid feeding and speech. And yet clinicians have no quantitative means to measure them. The best centers have dedicated feeding therapists whose role is simply clinical assessment of infant feeding. Next slide. Neoneur measures the patterns during routine care when inserted between the nipple and the bottle and provides clinicians quantified information that they currently don't have: a graphical trace of sucking, swallowing, breathing, quantifying several parameters that they already know and look for, as well as digital biomarkers that have been shown statistically to track capability and developmental maturation. This information is provided in a familiar format, much like weight chart is provided to the pediatrician. Neoneur outlicensed the foundational data, the patents, and the prototype from the University of Pennsylvania in 2019. Dr. Barbara Meadow-Cooper's $5 million of NIH-supported R01 research is Neoneur's backbone, with data on over 1,200 infants and over 50 supporting publications. Next slide. Because our upgraded device will be able to transmit data remotely, it will provide a means for consistency between clinical observations in the hospital, the follow-up clinic, the pediatrician's office, and the home, preventing the need to readmit or retain the infant in the NICU for in-person specialized observation, which even then is highly variable and subjective. Everyone wants to discharge the infant earlier, but they want to do so safely. Currently, 40% of readmissions are due to feeding issues and failure to thrive. The redesigned Neoneur will be easier to use with a disposable nutrient channel, Bluetooth connectivity, and cloud computation, all features our research users have requested. Next slide. The information Neoneur provides results in both clinical and economic benefits to the patient, care provider, and the healthcare system. Using the existing reimbursement system will enable feeding specialists to become a revenue center for the hospital. Next slide. But feeding evaluation is really only the tip of the iceberg. Neoneur is used to screen all infants for the risk of developmental delays, such as autism, is the ultimate goal. Treatment for ASD is the most effective if the child is treated earlier, and the earlier they are identified. These children are notoriously not identified until they are school age, and even then it requires several observations. Neoneur has supportive data that we can identify them at birth when their brains are the most plastic and receptive to intervention. Next slide, please. Using a 50,000 I-Core grant specific for customer discovery, we asked clinicians and parents where their needs were the greatest. Not only did they confirm immediate interest in multiple areas, but also identified this reimbursement avenue, which is sufficient for payment. Researchers continued to call us for a research unit. In 2019, 3 were placed. Prior to COVID, we were set to place 4 more. Next slide. We have a strong team of founders. My background's entirely in the medical space, with product ranging from new product development, commercialization to M&A. Dr. Madoff Cooper is the founder and emeritus of Pen and Chop. Neoneur is her primary focus. Dr. Zemmel, the inventor of the device, is on call for our needs and actively guides our engineering efforts. And we've added supporting teams through service sector and our business and scientific advisory boards. Unfortunately, Bill McJange, my engineering partner, who joined us this past year, was a COVID casualty. Next slide. Achievements really build momentum. In 2019, we incorporated, out-licensed our technology, won 2 grants, were finalists in 4, upgraded our device, and sold 3 research units. In 2020, it continued. We raised $250 in convertible notes, won the Pediatric Device Consortium Award, and submitted and scored a phase 1/2 SBIR grant, met with the FDA, and kicked off our next generation product. Our plans for 21 include completion of our clinical product with a submission to the FDA, raise $2.5 million for launch and supporting clinical studies, with the opportunity for an additional $2 million raise, which would accelerate our growth toward developmental indications. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, yeah, that's all right. We'll skip. Sorry, previous slide. Currently, we're building relationships and collecting data with centers of excellence through research sales. This will enable us to first launch into areas with the greatest clinical need, the level 4 NICU and CICU, and then our markets will cascade from one segment to another. Next slide. You're one slide ahead of me still. We're missing a slide. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Building our business off modest, realizable penetration, we model a 3% penetration into the hospital base, first of specialty hospitals and then level 3 affiliated hospitals. This positions us for possibility in 3 years, with sales demonstrating for an acquiring partner to scale effectively. We provide our investors short-term high yield on their investment because we have data, a device, a plan, and a strong team and can scale with a small sales force and a market telling us the winner device. Next slide. A $4.5 million investment will maximize opportunity both for feeding and development. 2.5 would enable us to launch into the feeding area with support in sales and marketing, clinicals, and to expand our technical needs. An additional $2 million would accelerate our reach to the developmental market and protect our position from competition. These are exciting market opportunities. Next slide.
Caroline, you have about 20 seconds left.
I'm done. So thank you for the opportunity. Do you have any questions?
Okay, great. Thank you so much for presenting. Audience members, let's put your questions in the Q&A chat, in the Q&A forum, not in the chat. And I will be able to pick them up from there. Okay, so while we're waiting for some questions to come in, Caroline, I think if you could talk about some of the intellectual property that's governing this, address kind of the progress that you've made so far and where you're going, what's your roadmap?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So we have acquired from our out license 2 existing approved patents from the University of Pennsylvania. We also acquired at the same time over 1,200 patients worth of data, and that data is invaluable in our ability to use it in artificial intelligence to extract our maturation curves. So we consider that in-house intellectual property. We also consider and are looking forward to additional patents in the area of our algorithm development and software.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so we have a question. Can you address what your FDA approval timeline is? You mentioned that you had an initial first meeting, but if you can kind of step back a little bit and give a broader view of what's the multi-year outlook for that.
Yeah, no, we're very optimistic. We had a great first meeting. It's called a sub-Q meeting, which is a pre-submission meeting with the FDA, where we presented our device, our application, our data, and how we suggested to submit. And they were very receptive and thought our approach was supportable, and actually suggested which device we should use for a predicate device. We anticipate submitting a 510K. You know, what I loved about that meeting was they asked two questions. One, the stability of our algorithm, whether we were going to be able to dynamically change it or actually have it as a static algorithm. And then the second question was, how fast are we going to submit? So we are rapidly moving towards a more clinically friendly device from our research device, and plan to submit second quarter of next year, and hope to have approval by second quarter 2022, sorry about that.
Okay, great. From an investor's perspective, can you address what could be some possible different exit points or different exit opportunities for a potential investor?
Yeah, I think they're all the classic exit points. So what I believe with most med tech devices is really going to show some traction. And so there's probably a couple of years down the road. I think we're really good candidates for acquisition as soon as we begin to show traction. So I look at our sales into those first 220 hospitals. If we achieve 3% there, I think we're a really exciting acquisition target. And I think these companies are much better situated to scale and with their sales and marketing arms, particularly if they sales already into these areas. So my first target, and I think the most exciting exit will be through acquisition. Of course, if that isn't as successful, we'll probably go an IPO.
Okay, thank you. Can you address a little bit, I know you touched upon it, but maybe go into a little more depth about your sales strategy. I think you mentioned first you were going to target the clinical usage, and maybe expand on how you go from there.
Yeah, no, I think we've got some really exciting sales opportunities. My belief is for most medical devices, it makes sense to go in through the clinician first. We've even had people talk about should we, and we consider going direct to consumer. But our approach is to do things in a scalable fashion. So we'll start with the most critical infants in the level 4 and level 4 NICU and the CICU. There's about 220 of these units in the United States, all specialty children's hospitals. And we'll go from there really to affiliated hospitals. We'll expand to where they have referring level 3 hospitals. There's about 1,200 of those. I think we can do that really effectively with a very small sales force supporting the founders, sort of a 3 to 4 size sales force in addition to the founders. And then we'll go from there to expanding that population, because initially will be the more critical infants in those populations. And then ultimately the well baby unit, because we really believe this is a device that should be used to screen all well baby units. One of the really interesting things about the particularly the premature market space is, as there have been more premature babies, those late premature babies, and feeding development starts at about 34 weeks. And so we're talking 34 to 36 weeks. So we're talking infants born in that same time frame are now being cared for in the well baby unit. So they used to automatically go to the NICU, and they no longer do that. So that would be actually the second most interesting market opportunity for us, and it gets us into the well baby space, where we then can be available to screen every baby.
Okay, great. Let's go with well babies, because we have some questions about that. Okay. So in screenings of otherwise healthy babies, what fraction of positive indications are faulty? What fraction of negative indications are false?
So I don't have we are not a diagnostic device, so we are not looking for positive and negative responses. We are a measuring device providing additional information to the clinician. The clinician would still retain their guidance on deciding what the infant situation was. So, when we get into developmental delays, it's always very tricky. The biggest challenge with developmental delays that you would be screening for with these infants is are they at risk or not? We have nothing to quantify this. So we look at Neoneur's information not being a diagnostic, but just being an additional piece of information that can quantify whether these infants should be looked at for early intervention.
Okay, great. Thank you. And last audience question. Is this an equipment sale only, or is there a recurring software revenue component to this?
You know, I think the TechLaunch audience is really savvy in this area, and I'd love their advice. Currently, we're looking at this as a medical device sale with a disposable. But there certainly is the opportunity to pivot and have it on a sort of recurring basis where we are analyzing the data and providing the analysis back. So I think it's still up for discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, audience, for putting your questions in there. We are going to go now to our investor panel. And we are going to start with Steve. Your question for Caroline.
My question would be, I guess, primarily, how would you describe the way that this would be integrated into a neonatal unit in a hospital? And how does it work in the workflow, how they handle bottles and feeding and all of that?
Yeah, and we're actually, with our redesign, actually double checking all of our beliefs by talking to feeding specialists. But we interviewed over 150. Most of them were clinicians operating in the NICU space. And so that gave us some really good insight. So it can be used during standard feeding. So the device itself is put between the nipple and a bottle, and they use it during standard feeds. It isn't attached to anything. And then the information, as we envision it, will be Bluetooth connected to their computer device. We're talking to some device screening and IT departments of hospitals to make sure we get that right, because we want to make sure that that's easy to do. Everything has to be easy these days.
And you've got the cleaning and reuse down and.
Yeah, so that's why we're going to have a disposable channel so that they can dispose of anything that touches the nutrient channel so that we don't have an infection issues. Did I answer all of your questions? I think I touched on only a few of the details.
Oh, no, that's good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. KK, your questions for Caroline.
Hi, Caroline. So a couple of questions. The cost of the device, do you have an approximate sense for the cost? The fixed and the reusable component?
Yeah, so our target market and the market that we've tested so far will have a capital component, a reusable component in the hospital that's less than $5,000. And that will be partnered with a disposable device component that would be less than $100. The exciting part of that is every time a feeding therapist does an assessment, they bill about $500. And those are not billings by the feeding therapists, because they tend to be lower level employees and are employees of the hospital. So this is a revenue center for the hospital by making the feeding therapists more effective.
Okay. Do you know what drives the cost?
I'm sorry, ask the question again.
What drives the cost, the $5,000? What is the biggest piece of it?
I think there's a lot of flexibility. Part of a big piece of that is what the market will bear. I think we have a high profit.
You're talking more pricing than cost. Okay, got it.
Yeah, pricing.
You mentioned in the FDA, they said that there's a predicate device. What is the predicate device?
So there really isn't, and that's the tricky part.
That's kind of why I was curious, because I didn't think there was.
Yeah, there really isn't. There are two players that have tried to enter the feeding market. One is N-Trainer, which is a stimulating device. I call it a stimulator pacifier, which is really an intervention device. And then there is another device called the NFANT, and NFANT measures tongue movement, and it really hasn't done well. What I like to say is they've identified and clarified for us that there really is a market need, but they are not having success in the marketplace.
Yeah, the downside of not having a predicate device is the FDA clearance for you might take longer. So
it's really interesting.
Bad news, right?
It's really interesting. You talk about the FDA. So that was exactly what we brought to the FDA. We said, these devices aren't like us. Yeah. So we think we should submit de novo. And they said, no, we think you should just like they did, be a 510K, submit as a biofeedback device because you're giving information to the clinician, and use NFAT even though you're not the same thing as they are. And they used your device, your articles as support for their device submission, but whatever,
Yeah.
the FDA will lead.
And the last one is just feedback. I'd love to see you do it as a service.
Love to see what?
See you do it as a service, not as a fixed.
So I'd love to chat with you about how to do that. I just don't have the background and knowledge about that type of business. So I would love to have a little coaching and conversation.
So you guys can take that offline and
Thank you.
continue that conversation. We've got to get to more investor comments. Joan, your comment or question for Caroline?
The type of clinical trials, if any.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I'm off mute. Can you hear me now?
I can see you, which helps a lot. So
Well, let me try again.
well, that works great. Whatever you just did.
Oh, okay. Now you can hear me. Good. All right. So my question is, what type of clinical trials, if any, are needed to get through the FDA approval, on this medical device? That's my first question. The second question has to do with your licensing from University of Pennsylvania. And is there any unusual clauses or requirements that you have to have in order to maintain that licensing? And the last thing that I would have been curious about is more the comment about your reimbursement. Is it an insurance code that you need? And will the hospitals want reimbursement from individuals who are using it, like the baby's mothers, to pay for the cost? Or is it just going to be like, I guess, Q-tips in the hospital?
Yep. So I can answer all three quickly. So clinical trials, we do not require any additional clinical trials for FDA. So when I talk about clinical trials, they're for market acceleration.
Okay.
Licensing, there is nothing unusual in my, in fact, I think it's a really nice license I got from the University of Pennsylvania. I think I did pretty well compared to others that I know who have out licensed from Penn.
Mhm.
Reimbursement. We believe there is adequate reimbursement and coding and payment and coverage already to cover the cost of the use of our device. And not only that, it will drive hospital revenue.
So it's insurance, like there'll be an insurance code, and hopefully the patient will have insurance so that there is a reimbursement.
Right. So as long as the patient has insurance, there is existing coding the insurance companies need, and frequently there is existing coverage and payment, which means the insurance company would pay and cover for the device. Insurance companies are all over the place.
Right.
Can't guarantee you 100%.
But I'm sorry, I know I'm running out of time. Just one thing. However, if you're dealing with preemies and parents at risk, children at risk, addiction and things like that, those tend to be the people who do not have insurance.
They are covered by Medicare.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Joan, thank you for your comments. The last investor comment that we have is from Lauren. Your questions for Caroline. Lauren, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I just said the other judges asked the questions I was going to ask you about the reimbursement and unit economics. But I guess maybe my one question, there was a Socolof enabled depicting the hospital and then someone's home. Just, is that, you're seeing, I know you're saying you're selling to hospitals, but I'm just curious about the telehealth. Will mothers then have the option? I know you're not doing direct consumer, but and is that data being fed back to the care provider or health provider? I was just curious about that slide.
Yeah, we think it's a very, one of the things that was exciting to me when I first saw the device was it's so, in a lot of ways, it's simple. And it's really nice and very much it orients itself to being able to be used for telehealth. So these infants are cared for in the NICU, and then there's a step down unit, and then they're covered by, followed with social services, and they're followed by their pediatrician. There's a lot of handoffs of these babies. And so it's really hard to have continuity of care. And yet, so if, when we talk to the feeding therapists in the NICU and we say, if they can send us the information back to us, then we can have a better understanding of the situation. Otherwise, they get readmitted. They have to come in for emergency care sometimes. Sometimes they have to come back. It's a mess. And it creates a lot of stress for the patient. So yeah, I think telehealth is a really exciting area in which the Neoneur device will help the clinical care of the infants. I don't have as much information on, and I think it's still evolving on how the reimbursement will follow that.
Okay. Thank you.
Lauren, thanks for your comments. Caroline, thank you very much for
Thank you.
answering the questions. Panelists, now is the time. If you open up your scorecards, please complete the scorecard for Neoneur. And for our audience, just a reminder, these are the many ways that you can get in touch with TechLaunch. If you have not been following us so far, please do follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We do post regularly there about when the next bullpen pitch competition is. And I do believe that applications for that next round are open right now. So if you are interested, if you're a founder in our audience and you're interested in pitching, go ahead, feel free to send us the application, get more information about it and submit. And also you can follow us for our office hours through our LinkedIn postings and Twitter. And we're ready for our next pitch. Our third and final pitch of the evening, when we're all thinking about being outside, of course, this is probably not a great one for the snow, but SwingShot. SwingShot provides a virtual sports training platform to the PGA teaching profession that includes an in-field Cyclops camera for capturing valuable video content, cloud services for storage, software, and access to select SwingShot certified PGA teaching professionals within their established marketplace. SwingShot was mentored by Eric Korb, and today is being presented by Patrick O'Donnell, founder and CEO. Patrick, are you ready?
I am. Thanks, Rob.
Great.
I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and I am the founder and CEO of SwingShot. Next, Eric. So we started SwingShot with for lack of a better term, a selfie stick camera we developed. And the point of having that camera was to be able to capture on-course video as opposed to in a driving range or in a practice round, feeling that it was extremely valuable video, but we weren't quite sure what to do with all that video. So next. We sold $1 million plus of this product over the last few years. That's hardware product, and we have well over 3,000 customers that have purchased our cameras. And but the most important part about that is that we have gotten all kinds of information. We've gone through every distribution channel that you can imagine, including big box, direct, Amazon, Golf Channel. And we know that our price point for our starter model is $200 up to $400 is an easy selling point for us. We gathered a great management team along the way, and we're a full-blown operations today. So next. Now, what do our customers want when they get our camera? So at the time when we did it, we just had this camera. We weren't sure what the next level was going to be, but we know we got a great price point on it. And we know that our customers, the golfer out there right now, wants to improve their swing. And we know that the SwingShot is easy to use, simple. It's a very mobile device and transportable. So we do all this because it doesn't disrupt the pace of play, which is a big, it would be a bad selling point. If we could not if we slow down the pace of play, it's just not going to be good for us. So we developed this camera for the purpose of not having it disrupt or interrupt our game of play. So now what do users want to do? They want to share that video with teaching professionals. And next. So guess what we're doing? Phase 2. So we have these cameras. Now we upload it to the cloud, and then we send it off to select PGA teaching professionals that are using our proprietary software to send back a lesson based on the on-course video that they receive from that golfer. Next. Again, they have that app. That first screen shows simple app. You press it, you upload the video that you've recorded, automatically goes to the cloud. You select the pro that you want from our selected list that's there with very vast array of different experiences. And then you get back a very simple, easy, seamless, effective lesson. Next. What makes us different than everything else that's out there? So there's tons of recording devices. There's all kinds of golf and specific golf analytics software. There's obviously PGA teaching professionals that do their lessons online today, and cloud services are common. We're the only ones that put all these together. Although we offer a proprietary camera, any kind of recording device, if it gets to that point, can start to record that on-course video. And we put it together with our list of PGA teaching professionals with our proprietary software. So we think this is the best solution of all, of getting like valuable content and having it assessed in a quick lesson. Next. Golf industry. How big is the golf industry? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Golf instructional business is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And here's the interesting, avid golfers, only less than 20% of avid golfers actually take a lesson every year. And they take a few of them, but the numbers are not that big. And the reasons are all too expensive. It's inaccessible. I don't know the pro. It's a day of time, on and on and on. Well, SwingShot and the platform we have right now basically overcomes each and every one of those hurdles. Next. So our revenue stream is we're going to continue to sell our cameras, and now we're going to get our monthly subscriptions by offering these cloud services that will be the software, will give access to the software, and also access to that list of SwingShot certified PGA teaching professionals for the coaching. So we get revenue off the transactional business, the monthly subscription, as well as the camera sales. Next. What are pros like about it? Well, the pros love the fact that they're talking about additional revenue coming in. They can finish their day of teaching or coaching on the golf course, go home, sit in their living room, and knock out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more lessons, whichever they want, for a negotiated price, and obviously add some additional revenue to their bottom line every year. That's one. But also, we provide them with that tool, the software. It's proprietary, and it's designed to be easy, quick, accessible, and we transfer it into a really professional looking lesson back to the students. So literally we designing it so a coach could in effect give a lesson in 10 to 15 minutes, just based on key points on someone's swing. So it makes us a little unique there too. And we are obviously being contacted by a lot of other sports and coaches to be able to use this app with all types of biometric type of sports that are out there, such as baseball, soccer, tennis. Next. Put together. It was important for us to put together and find out what are the needs of the teaching professional and what do they see. So the advisory board we have together for them covers every demographic. We want to be able to get to what's the best advice we can get to somebody who caters to the female market, which, by the way, is a big teaching industry, percentage-wise higher, to the youth, to academies, to group lessons. So we put together a board here. It's very diverse in terms of who their demographic is, and I think it's important for us. Next. Okay, so on the first 3 months in the prototype phase, we're going to pick up a couple hundred user subscribers. We have some low-hanging fruit from our current SwingShot customers. We just get a hold of our hardware, or people that bought our cameras. We've already done that. As soon as our app is available, they're willing to pay that subscription price. So that's the low-hanging fruit, and we want to get to the point within the next 12 to 15 months or so that we have 10,000 plus subscribers. And we think that's very doable based on what we've done so far. Next. The financials. So the key thing here is where our revenue we expect to be. And I think conservatively somewhere in the $25 to $30 million range in 5 years. And that's all based on historical evidence. So, if somebody wants to talk to me, and I'll defend these numbers that are in there, but the profitability on this is essential. And we also see an intersect with the profit of the software and the transactional business with the hardware at some point in possibly year 2 or 3. Next. Myself, along with, we take on Jason Talley, and this is really important for us. Jason's our CTO. He's excellent. Dan comes from Nike. He's a director of marketing and branding for Nike Golf. And Charles had a history in running his own marketing company, highly connected, and these guys got phenomenal experience. Next. Again, we're going to take most of the money that we're taking. We're looking at 750,000 raised here and apply it towards software, marketplace development, and increasing and converting some of our subscriptions. So that's where the bulk of our money is going to go. Next. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to say is, SwingShot's expanding our platform to use valuable video content to seamlessly, quickly, inexpensively, and virtually connect the teaching profession with athletes. That's our goal. Again, I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and this is SwingShot, and thanks a lot for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Great, Pat. Thank you so much. It was an interesting presentation. We're going to open this up to questions from the audience now. So audience members, please put your questions in the Q&A spot at the bottom of your screen. We have a question about that I think really speaks to the overall trend of golf as an industry in the US. We've heard stories about devastating consequences for golf courses, financial difficulties of golf courses. So overall, if golf courses are having difficulty and trouble, how do you see the industry overall? What are the growth prospects for the industry overall? And how do you see your product fitting in with that?
Sure, it's a great question. So things have flattened. I mean, going way back to the recession in 2008, golf took a major hit, and the way we track it is rounds as well as how many golfers are out there. And as of last year, we're up to about 26, 27 million golfers in the United States alone. So that has been, it's kind of balanced and leveled itself off. So the interesting thing is that the year of, and I would never look at it this way normally, but COVID has brought out golf like we've never seen in a long time. So golf rounds, just to give you an idea, are up about 12, 15%, and that's including after a shutdown of a month and a half, the entire nation of all golf courses. So it's been a boom to the golf industry. But we think because we're really good, I gave that number before of less than 20% of avid golfers take a lesson. We're actually going after the main reason, if you ask a lot of people that play golf or don't play golf, why they don't play it, because it's hard, it's difficult. And many of those people, that 27 million, don't want to take a lesson because it's time consuming. They don't think they're going to learn. So our whole thing here is to make it really easy, and using technology today, remote training becomes, it's remote learning and remote training is critical today, and it's becoming the norm. That what separates us from everybody else out there is we're making it very, very easy. So even if you're indoor and you take a few swings, and you want to send it to a coach, and you pay a small fee for having that done. He looks at your swing and gives you 4 or 5 pointers. You turn around and try it out, and it works, then we're a success. And they're going to tell somebody else about it, and they're going to tell somebody else. So we're actually think we're going to be very good for the growth of the game.
Okay, great. We have a question about how the camera works. So what's the advantage of having this on your club and analyzing your swing? And how does this compare to just having someone, your golfing partner, recording on their phone? What's the advantage to your hardware?
Well, the biggest advantage and everybody I've spoken to, the biggest advantage we have right now is that we've gotten audience feedback. And the overwhelming reason people buy our camera to begin with, and they've tried different things. They've tried cell phones and their partner, is that we don't want to disrupt the game of golf. Most people go out there and play a game of golf, not because they're trying to analyze their own game and figure out what's the best way to do it. And you're not going to want to interrupt somebody you're playing with and ask them to videotape you. So the whole idea, and to give you an example, I've had several golfers have gone out and used our camera, and after 5 or 6 holes, there are many in the foursome that never even knew they used a camera. So the simple use of ours is designed to stick it in the ground. It's got a turf spike as you approach your ball. You push a button, you record that video, you take it out, put it back in your bag along with your golf club. It's not time consuming, it's seamless, and it's really worked well for us. But what's important is the content that you get off of there. So nobody's been able to get on-course video content before. And what you do on a driving range and what you do in a practice round is completely different than what you do on the golf course. And just about every teaching profession would tell you that too. So we're providing really good, valuable content to the teaching profession.
Okay, great. Another question about the camera itself. How many megapixels is it? And is it Bluetooth compatible with the golfer's smartphone?
Okay, so I'll answer the first one from a megapixel standpoint. We're in the process of a 4K right now. So our biggest concern whenever we go really high res, and it's a high res camera to begin with, when we go really high res is the file sizes. But we've got, so from a technical standpoint, been able to compress a lot of file size. So our new one, currently we're running at 1080p, and we'll be up to 4K. But quite frankly, the difference between 1080p and 4K is minimal. And we also have a slow motion mode so that you can slow it down to 240 frames per second, which a lot of teaching professionals like to see as well. And the second part of the question was, again, I'm trying to think.
It was Bluetooth capability.
Yep. So ours, every one of our cameras has a separate IP address. So all you have to do is go to your settings on your phone, select SwingShot. And so you could be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and you're going to get a signal between that camera and any mobile device you have. So we took Bluetooth, and not that it lacks stability, but we took some of that potential out of it. And so now everything is really simple. So.
Okay, great. We have a question about the business structure around SwingShot. It looks like SwingShot is an existing business, and so if, as a new investor, would they obtain interest in the current business or in a new formation?
No, it would be in the current business. And all we're doing is expanding on the platform we have. We actually have an app that goes with our camera right now. It's automatic. So, and that app, all it allows you to do is slow motion, zoom, split screen, some annotation tools. Pretty cool and a lot of fun. But the bottom line is not something you normally share with your teaching pro. So all we're doing is expanding on the current platform that we have and allowing that access to a teaching pro and getting that lesson back and getting that additional revenue that comes with it. So it's an expansion onto what our current product is. And any new investor would take advantage of that.
Okay, great. And we have time for one more question. We've actually got two questions about asking what kinds of celebrity endorsements have you been pursuing?
Well, that's interesting. The first one that we had was Eric Compton, and many people may not know of Eric Compton, but 3 or 4 years ago, he was ranked 41st in the world. He came in second in the US Open. And what made that important is he's a double heart transplant. And Eric's on the web.com trying to get back on the PGA Tour, but he's a fantastic story. And Eric loves our product. He saw it in the bag one time, wanted to know what it was. And we've had a great relationship with Eric ever since. However, and I'm not saying however, I shouldn't say that. But in addition to, I mentioned a couple other people that are on our team, one being a Nike executive and the other owning a marketing company, very successful, and they have phenomenal contacts and connections. And so we have had many of those talks about partnering with some of the sponsorships and some of the celebrities that they have under their belt, which could certainly bring us to a different position. But we want to prove out the product first and then figure out if we need to spend the kind of money to get that kind of partnership put together.
Okay, great. So audience, thank you for your questions. We are going to turn this over now to our investor panel and start with some questions there. Let's see, we are going to start with KK. You're up first. Your questions or comments for Pat with SwingShot.
Hi, Pat. So how far along are you in the software build? I mean, how much time do you think you'll take to go to market?
We'll get our first prototypes within the first 90 days. So maybe a little sooner, but our CTO, Jason's fantastic, and this is not his first rodeo. So we're already in the process of going that route. So.
You had used the term pro and cloud services. Are they synonymous or are there something different between those two?
What was the first term?
The pro, in one of your slides, you had the word pro and then you had cloud services.
Oh, well, the pro we just applied to the app name. So
Okay.
SwingShot Pro app, but certainly all that will be sitting on the cloud. So
Got it. So one of the things that it seemed to me like, I mean, I use Strava for my biking.
Mhm.
And there's an opportunity in my mind for you to create a golf-centric social network.
correct.
People like to share, even though, I mean, obviously, when you're going out golfing, you're only sharing it with the people you went with, but it gives you the ability to share your game with others. I think you might be missing on an opportunity to kind of expand the reach and using the pro more as an upsell rather than a targeted training thing. So something to give.
KK, I totally agree. We're totally on the page in there, and that's part of what Dan Alder and Charlie bring to the table, is because that community reach and that social interaction, that's what we really, aside from being instructional, we wanted to really kind of like be part of a community reach. So
And the last comment I had is a few of the companies I'm working with, they're doing image processing for yoga, they're doing image processing for weightlifting. That seems like something that you can easily add on. I'm sure you thought about it.
we have, we figure we'll start with golf, like GoPro started with surfing, for theirs. We'll start with golf and then we'll see where the market's bear, because we've been contacted by all kinds of baseball. Tennis is a biometric sport. So any of those biometrics, or actually we've been talked to by for people doing physical therapy. So there could be other industries. We just want to be a platform to take video and make it really easy to assess and get back and give them the information back to fix.
Thanks.
Thanks, KK.
Okay, thank you. Next up on the panel, we have Joan, your questions and comments for Pat.
Hi. So the revenue share with the pros, right? Which I'm assuming, is it the revenue share 10? Is it 10% of that $5.99 or?
No. So what happened? That's a great question, Joan. I didn't get a chance to expand on it. So what we're doing as we're gathering these pros, we're saying based on your experience, based on what your resume looks like, what kind of price point do you think you're going to be worth getting on our platform? So they range so far from $80 down to $30. Some kid 2 years out of Q school may want to charge $30 for giving lessons. Again, using SwingShot's proprietary software. So based on you as a golfer, say you went out there and said, you know what, I really want to go the guy that's got all this experience. I'm going to select him, and he happens to be $80 for doing his assessment. We would get 10% of that $80 and all the way down to the dollar amounts. So kind of like the market democratizing itself, we'll take a piece of that.
All right, but I still have to pay a monthly fee or
Correct.
a subscription to have access to
Right.
that.
You as a user, yes.
Okay, so are you developing the software in-house, or are you managing the development elsewhere?
So we are, much of what software is going on today is the code's been written already. So we're stringing some of the software together. We'll own the source code when all is said and done. But we are looking at this in terms of protecting ourselves from an IP and patent standpoint. And so I think our developers, some of them are overseas at this point. I know some of them are, but we've got a good relationship. And again, Jason, with his background, our CTO, I'd love to have him on here. He's just a superstar, and he's been there before. He's built all kinds of marketplaces and software systems. So you're right. Your point is like how do we protect ourselves? So hopefully, when we go over to Elizabeth and Jim Gerhardt over there, we talk about IP.
Fine. All right, and actually, my last question or comment is, it's really interesting as a product. Usually you want something cheaper or something faster or something better or easier. So you're betting on easier driving your growth in market share.
Correct. We're really betting on the fact to keep it really, really simple. People have said to us, the genius of your product is how simple and easy it is. And yet very effective. So if we can't teach somebody, we know in golf, we know there's 5 or 6 or 10 things that you do fundamentally that people make a mistake on. You go get a lesson and they'll tell you, you need this equipment, that equipment. We're picking people saying our software says, keep your head straight, your feet straight, this, that, the other thing done, and you move on. And it's really, really simple and easy. That's the key.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Thanks. Okay, next up we have Lauren. Your questions and comments for Pat.
Yeah. So great presentation. Just curious, what are your thoughts on your possible exit strategies?
Well, that changes almost every day. For our first thing is we're going to take, we want to prove out the 2 other streams of revenue. We know that we have that one stream with the hardware and the cameras. So what's important for us is to get our valuation up. So we're going to work really hard to prove out those other 2 streams of revenue. And we can do that very shortly. And it's based on how quickly do we get it to move. But we've been contacted early on, just before we even got to this point, by some sports marketing companies and some other areas that some other companies that are somewhat related that would be interested to see how well our platform works out. So it's too soon for us to think where we might be, but our focus right now is going to get that valuation up as high as possible and get our sales as quickly as possible. But it's a good question, Lauren. I hear what you're saying. So how quickly do we exit? I don't know. And I think that's something that as an investor is discussed when the opportunities arise. And hopefully it'll be when the valuation is up high enough. So.
And you mentioned also marketing to like schools and universities. Are you actively doing? What are your thoughts on that? Because I could see this being something that they would use.
Yeah, we've already talked to university, and we did this before when we had their simple free subscription for that app that was there, and we still have that online. But we went to a lot of universities back then, so we've developed a nice database. And I was showing just in golf, but I was showing that team of people there. Well, a couple of them do focus on the education, the sports departments, and the athletic departments for various schools. So we've talked to schools from everything about football, soccer, making it easy. And there are some platforms out there. I'll be frank about the whole. There's Huddle and some other platforms out there, but if you look at them, they're not simple like we're talking about. We're talking about taking something very, very simple and easy. And so again, for messages that overall we want to be this easy, simple. Take video and find the experts that know they can take down and break down something that you're doing very simple and get it back to you in a hurry. And if it's successful, it's just gonna carry itself. I mean, these teaching pros have been looking at some of these pros that we're talking to have been looking at this software for years. They've been using some of it, and they always say it gets complicated. And the whole idea.
Pat, that's great. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we do have one more panelist and we really do need to get his comments in here.
Thanks, Lauren. If I didn't finish it, thanks, Tom.
Okay. Steve, you're up last. Your comments for Pat.
Thanks, Robin. Hey, Pat, how many SwingShots are in the field now?
We have about 4,000, a little over 4,000. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but we sold those on a very small shoestring budget. So we say we're successful so far. But I'm just curious, in your lesson concept, how long a video, if I'm the student, do I need to send to the teacher? Well, that's good. So our camera is designed to take video clips. So we're really realistically looking at maybe a 15 or 20-second clip of your actual swing. And just so you know, our next version will be voice activated. So if you're on the golf course, you say SwingShot record. Just one 15-second clip of my swing, and that's what starts the lesson. Yep. And I get back a 15-minute video from the pro. Well, it won't be a 15-minute. Well, maybe a 15-minute video because they're going to go slow motion. They're going to narrate and convert to text. So they may take that 15 seconds and there may be 4 or 5 points they're pointing out to. So it may end up being a 15-minute lesson on the way back, but on the back side. But yes, that's all they really need is a couple. And are they texting over my video, or are they videoing themselves demonstrating something? Or no, they're texting over your video. So they'll be pointing out. So I wish I had the app to show you, but they'd be pointing out. You literally point on someone's shoulders you point out that you should turn your shoulders 20 degrees more. It'll convert to text at the bottom, point A, point B, point C, and point D.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So investor judges, if you could take a few minutes now to complete the scorecard for SwingShot. Pat, thank you very much for answering those questions. And while the investors are completing the scorecard, just wanted to go over some of the things that TechLaunch has done to date, some of our stats. The TechLaunch name is synonymous with New Jersey entrepreneurship. To date, we've served over 100 tech-focused companies and mentored more than 200 aspiring entrepreneurs. 26 tech ventures have been launched with seed capital. And since 2017, we've held 19 bullpen events catering to more than 50 seed stage companies. And while the investors and judges are completing the scorecard, I just want to take a few minutes to kind of review some of the key takeaways. We've heard some consistent themes throughout their comments, and I think these are really helpful for some of the founders that might be in the audience who are joining us today. One of the key themes was about recurring revenue and SaaS. And this, of course, is not new. This is, obviously something that every startup needs to think about if they have a SaaS component. And certainly they need to look at recurring revenue because that's on every investor's mind. But really looking to see where you can expand your revenue stream and taking a good 360 view of your revenue opportunities to see where can some of that be recurring and how can you expand that and where else can you take a look. Some of the stories and the pitches that we've heard today, we heard companies that started out in one area and are just beginning to kind of take a look around and see where else they can expand into revenue opportunities. Another theme that came up, we've heard some concerns about obstacles towards timing. Every investor is always going to look to see, where are the roadblocks and what could potentially be a barrier to faster acceleration. And we heard some concerns about things that might extend that time. So those are some things that as a founder, you should try to be aware of to be able to address. I think every founder addressed it very well today, but be able to answer those questions about length of your sales cycle, about certain approvals, and about any difficulties in your go-to-market entry. And finally, one of the points that I heard from investor comments was about really being able to assess the workflow and refining your workflow around your use cases. So for founders to really get a better handle on how is this being used and where can your innovation in your technology or in your customer experience, where can you make slight improvements to improve the usage of your product or service? So let's check the tabulations. Let me see if I have the digital virtual envelope, please. The winner is Neoneur in a very close race. Congratulations, Caroline and Neoneur.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mario.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Caroline. And great presentation. Actually, all three presentations were done very well. Obviously, we have one winner. So Caroline, offline, please, let's reconnect and we'll discuss your winnings, the $15,000 in-kind services, as well as the opportunity to present that Jumpstart New Jersey Angel Network and Tech Council Ventures. So congratulations. I do want to take the opportunity right now. By the way, that picture of me was taken during the summer when I had a tan. So it's just, it's just not the same. I miss going on my cruises. I miss seeing my friends. And I miss everything about face-to-face. So, but we move on. So I do want to thank our co-host, Robin Baer. Thank you very much for a fantastic job, especially filling in some of the questions and comments. And also to Eric for coordinating and being the webinar producer. Fantastic job. Thank you to our panelists, Lauren, Steve, KK, Joan, for their great constructive feedback and questions. Thank you to our event partners, Witham Smith & Brown, Gibbons Law, Casabona Ventures, and Gerhardt Law. Thank you to our senior mentors and advisors, whom without them, the Business Accelerator and Mentoring Program just wouldn't be successful. They are listed on our TechLaunch website, so please go there when you get a chance. The other thing is, finally, thank you to our attendees, the audience, for the excellent and challenging questions. Keep healthy, safe till the next bullpen event, and then onward as well, longer. Our next bullpen event is mid-March. We'll make the announcement, and it'll also be posted on the website, techlaunch.com. Applications for our next Business Accelerator program will be announced soon. Check out our website, techlaunch.com. Lastly, happy and safe holidays to all. Thank you very much for participating and attending this webinar.